Welcome to the GAB Talks by the Independent Press Award. I'm your hostess, Gabby Olzak. Today, we will be chatting with TonyJSelimi, author of The Unfakeable Code, winner of the 2022 New York City Big Book Award for Self-Help, Spiritual, and Self-Help General. Tony is an international leader in personal development, award-winning author, business coach, filmmaker, and life strategist specializing in human behavior, wealth building, and leadership excellence. He is a graduate of the University College London and founder of TJS Cognition. Tony educates and inspires people all over the world and is the author of A Path to Wisdom, #Loneliness, and A Path to Excellence. Congratulations, Tony, and welcome to the GAB Talks.
Thank you so much, Gabby. It's such a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you. So, Tony, I read somewhere that you wrote, you are born with the ability to do both evil and good. What you choose when war rages inside or outside of you is what defines the kind of unfakeable individual you become. Tony, describe to us the unfakeable individual.
When I talk about the unfakeable individual, we're talking about the true blueprint that it's unique to you, meaning you are an authentic individual. What makes people inauthentic, it's all the pains and all the frustrations and all the resentments and anger that people accumulate over the years through many different experiences, hurt, accidents, divorces, rejections, you name it. So the more we put on masks, the more our entire physiology changes. Therefore, it creates imbalance in our hormones, but also in the way the body responds to stress. So the more we do the inner work, the more we do the process, which I'm sharing in the Unfakeable Code, the more we go back into our true divinity. And our true divinity in our nature is an authentic individual who does not wear any masks.
Yeah, right. In fact, you've also been quoted as saying we're born authentic, but we learn to be fake. Why do you believe this?
Well, the reality is we all come here with a clean slate. Now, every single information that we receive from our parenting, from society, from our schooling, from media, from social media, everything that we are like a sponge, especially babies, especially in the first part of the first 5-6 years when they just absorb information before developing their cognition, before developing their analytical skills and actually knowing what's good or bad. And unfortunately, majority of this information as we go through life gets stored in our subconscious mind, which means we go into this autopilot of actually living from those experiences and those emotions, which not necessarily may be the right thing for us.
Now, throughout your life, you've had a lot of incredible experiences. In fact, your life really is like a Hollywood film. You overcame abuse, bullying, civil war, homelessness, and now, in fact, immense success. So share your experiences, Tony, with our listeners.
I was born in Northern Republic of Macedonia. Back then used to be called Yugoslavia. From a very young age, people considered me as a gifted child. So therefore, my parents made sure that I had additional tuition at home on top of the education. But also I had this intuitive empathy and also healing hands that, I couldn't make sense when I was a child. But, growing up in a culture where back then, there was no equality, there's no justice, and seeing my mother being abused, my sisters being abused, and my deeper self knew this is not right. On one hand, various religions and society tells you we're all born equal, and it's written in some laws. It's also in the American Constitution, if you think about it. But then you see so much injustice in society, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, in family environment. So as I went through education, I ended up being bullied just because I'm of a different creed from the majority in the school. And that didn't sit with me at all. So I really dedicated my life to study science, to study the mysteries of life. And why is it people behave in the way behaving? And what is it I can do to help and change that? So then the civil war fell upon us, and then suddenly everything I knew about myself, all of my identity, my family, friends, I was taken from university to fight a civil war I deep down despised. Now you can imagine the trauma behind that. You know, most people today call it PTSD, but back then nobody was talking about PTSD or mental health. You just do a duty. And so when my life was saved, I suddenly, again, I have another environment which I knew nothing about it. You know, my life was saved, and my mom put me on a one-way flight ticket to London. And here I am arriving in London, living homeless for 6 months. And not only I had to address my emotions and what happened to me in the war, but also the possibility that I would never see the rest of my family, my mom, my dad, and also I couldn't speak English, you know, and trying to look to stabilize myself in a new environment and what would be the next steps, despite of all the pain, all the trauma that I experienced, and get myself back on the feet so I can work and also being able to support some of the members of my family in the war zone, because the war continued for another 7 years. So, you know, all of those different challenges, including then having to pay for my own education and then graduate from one of the top engineering universities with a dual degree in engineering and also organizational behavior and management, had many, many challenges I had to overcome, which then pretty much put me in touch with my childhood kind of vision about helping people globally. So on this journey, I continued to do a lot of personal development, spiritual development, met some of the top healers in the world to help me heal myself. But I never thought that one day I'll do that for others, because my main sort of desire was to get my honors, go out there, work for big companies, work in technology, and do some amazing work, which I did. But then in 2008, 2009, after the financial crisis that happened globally, there were so many events that made me almost relive the trauma. And I just felt like I'm not in control of my life. Somebody else outside of me can control my life, whether it's the economy, whether it's the war, whether it's uncertainty, when it's jobs. And I went like, hold on a bit, you know. I see so many people that inspired me, creating an incredible life and reality by simply serving people and not buying into mass media. So this is where I sit down and I said, how do I combine those two worlds that I love so much? One was the science in me, the engineer in me, you know, studying various different disciplines such as cosmology, neuroscience. Then we look at the physiology, biology, and various aspects of different disciplines and universal laws. And then also my healing aspects of it. So this is where I literally spent 12 weeks in meditation, and I sat down and I wrote the first book, A Path to Wisdom, how to live a balanced, healthy, and peaceful life, because those were the three things I noticed people globally have a problem with: having inner peace, having a work-life balance, and having health. And majority of people who pursued careers, they suffered health-wise. And other people did not have inner peace, no matter how wealthy they were, no matter how much reputation or fame they had this noise inside of them. They couldn't go to sleep.
Yes, it is a noise. I agree with you. That's a great description. So Tony, let's get to the book. What is the Unfakeable Code? And tell us about the 5 principles that you detail in each chapter. You say that applying the principles will help you create, break, and upgrade your mind's code. Tell us about this.
So the Unfakeable Code came about as the COVID started to shut down the borders globally. And my partner works in NHS, he's a heart surgeon, and also I had a lot of clients, all of my flights were canceled. And I sat down and I said, this is going to be global before it went global. Just the moment I started seeing what was happening in China, in Wuhan, I went like, okay, this is not going to stop. We having some huge threat in here, and people are not prepared, businesses are not prepared. So within like a couple of months, 3 months, I was working with a client from US in Dominican Republic. I have this training program, 10 days vital planning, which is like a mastery unique VIP program. So when I came to England, within a couple of weeks, we went into lockdown. And that was the biggest alarm that made me think like, oh my God, no one is prepared for this. So I sat down and I said, okay, what is the biggest problem we're going to have? One, we're going to have massive unemployment. Two, we're going to have people with a lot of mental health issues, meaning everything that they had now is going to be tripled and quadrupled and maybe even 10 times, where it's come depression, anxiety, addiction, divorce rates, uncertainty, insecurity, fears, doubts, and everything that was happening at the beginning of COVID. So I sit down and I said, okay, let me write another book that I can offer humanity a way to get back into authentic living, and meaning being able to take back control of how you respond to stresses outside of yourself. That means everything that was being said in the media, majority of the people became overwhelmed with that. And therefore, the fear increased. And when the fear increases, our cortisol level goes up, our stress levels goes up, and therefore there's so many different effects on the physical body and the emotional body. So I sat down and I mapped the entire book of how to take people on a journey to understand certain transient personas that we adopt. Transient personas are not your true identity. It's something that you pick up on the way as you grow into your fullest self. For instance, one of the biggest transient persona that people adopted during COVID was scarcity persona, which means suddenly everything was withdrawn, suddenly the border shut down, suddenly there's no jobs, there's no income, and therefore your amygdala goes into overload. And a lot of people don't know how to manage that. So in one of the principles, I take them through the process of how to be able to not give in to transient persona, but get back into authentic self, which is very powerful and can take back control in the way it responds to certain stressors. So therefore, it is those three things: to take back control. And then the second part is I notice how leadership globally made so many bad mistakes and choices. So therefore, I wanted to also give people not only to awaken their true leadership within the self, but also the leaders around the world, being in the company, being in the government, to be able to do that inner self-reflective work when they make big decisions that affects humanity, not just the country in which the leaders operate. Because, we are in a world where we are so interconnected that most people see separation and segregation. But in reality is we are one. And when you think about some of the laws, especially the universal laws, the law of one to many and many to one. And if you really understand that, and through the books, I actually share some of those laws, especially in the book, A Path to Excellence I just wrote, you will have a very different perception about how you deal with outer reality and how you can take back control of the way you think, the way you respond, the way you make decisions, the way you make choices, and be able to refine yourself. So when you do those things, you actually think for the greater good. And then the other part is basically where for people who go through transition, and all these people who were put in furlough, people who, some of them lost a lot of their jobs, and job losses will increase as the technology goes forward with artificial intelligence, something that I talk about in my TEDx talk now has over millions of views, which is Technological Armageddon, a wake-up call for humanity, which means many people are not prepared into this new post-COVID era, but also an era where artificial intelligence will surpass human intelligence, which are now very close to that. So therefore, the unemployment will increase. So I wanted to give people a tool to pretty much live freely on their terms. So if they lost their job, to see how by fulfilling and going through the processes in the book, they can awaken a big vision inside of them so they can actually be, start their own business, become entrepreneurs, or teach themselves new skills so they can go back into work and be successful.
So Tony, it sounds like really everyone can benefit from using the Unfakeable code. Is there one specific principle that you believe is more critical to follow than the others? I know that's a
great question, Gabby. It's the one that pretty much not only the thousands of clients who have responded to me when they read the book, but also something that has helped me through every challenge in life. And that is principle number 5, which also goes with the question earlier on when you said to me when we started this interview about we are born clean slate, and then that evil within us, we awaken it through all those different experiences that we perceive to be only one-sided and painful and resentful. So principle number 5 deals with that, and I can state it for you.
Please.
Let your heart be the only military commander that helps you win every battle in life. And, if you just take that principle in your life, so every time you get challenged, whether it's with your children, whether it's with yourself, whether it's with your partner, whether it's at work, whether it's on bus, whether it's, you walking on the street and somebody pisses you off, or maybe you don't agree with the government. If you just take that principle, it'll take you back into the true self, the authentic, lovable, kind, respectful, appreciative, joyful self. And your heart does not make the decisions that your temporary emotions do. So, we all could do with spreading more love and more kindness into the world, especially when we get challenged.
It sounds like you applied that principle when you were 20 years old and homeless in London. You said one of the things that you did, obviously for money, so you could survive and pay for your way through university, was you said you carried shopping bags for elderly people.
Yes.
Were you applying that principle?
Absolutely. I mean, this principle, what inspired me, Gabby, it's seeing mom and dad. And, they started their life with nothing. They are Second World War children, and we're talking about, most people who have parents that were children during the Second World War, they would know what I know about my parents and my grandparents as well, because my grandparents were in the First and the Second World War. My mom and dad was in the Second World War. And, despite of the inequality, despite of the injustice, despite of the abuse my mother received in the family environment and also in a society, she was so, so kind. As a child, I did not really understand how one could put up with so much abuse and still be kind. It took me years to master that skill. And sometimes I still have to work on it when my buttons are really repressed about something that I deeply care about. But I remind myself the importance of love and the importance of our spirituality, the importance of us without any labels, meaning any creed labels, nationality labels, religion labels, professional labels, famous labels. It does not matter, because we come naked in this world, we go back naked. And when we take that and we combine that with our ability to love and be kind, we can create miracles.
That's a beautiful message, Tony. When did you first think about creating the Unfakeable Code? And tell us about the significance of the title.
The significance of the title, it's really to a lot of people on the journey of self-growth. We tend to be infatuated by people that we perceive have what we don't have. And that can be a very dangerous path to follow, because, we're not considering the journey that person has gone through, the experience, the knowledge, the skills, everything they've gone through. So therefore, we want to create a fake life. That's why in the Unfakeable Code, I talk about to break down this culture of fake it till you make it. Because, you are unique. And when you give that uniqueness in you, the freedom to be all it can be, and you continue to grow, you continue to invest in the self, so therefore you can awaken those traits that you admire in others, you really start to stand at the shoulders of the giants. This is what one of my mentors and globally respectful teachers that I love, Dr. John Demartini, when he met me 10 years ago, this was pretty much after the transition from corporate world into starting my own business and in process of writing my book, A Path to Wisdom. He went to me, he said, if you continue the way I've seen you, you will stand at the shoulders of the giants and you'll be making a global difference. And he used the same words that my grandfather and my mother and my dad used to tell me when I was a child. So suddenly those two worlds collided. And suddenly I have another human being tell me things that my grandfather and those spiritual teachers that my parents used to go to told my parents, that, one day I'll be a grand healer and I'll be going around the world educating people and having homes in people's hearts. And suddenly I was living that reality. So the Unfakeable Code is really about awakening in people their uniqueness, their gifts, their traits that makes them great, that makes them take back control and live an incredible life.
Would you say that that was the experience that inspired you to leave your successful corporate career to lead an entrepreneurial life and to be a business coach?
I would say it was the fear, to be very frank. It was,
Fear is very compelling.
Yes, I mean, basically in 2008, 2009, when I lost my job in technology, and there was this 1 year where pretty much I almost went back after 20 years of working extremely hard to be a successful graduate, to do all those professional courses. I was facing the prospect again of being homeless. The financial crisis of 2008 had a tremendous impact in me and many people around me when we were working. So I was the last one to leave the corporate career. And, I went to the job center, and I think I share this in the book. And this is for the first time in 20 years for me to go and seek help, government help. And with no fault of mine, because there was no job out there. I sent over 1,000 CVs and I only got 2 responses. And that was very disheartening when,
Sure.
you are willing to work, but there's no job. Either people will tell you you're overqualified, or other people will say to you, you are underqualified. And, you have all of these newspapers telling you that the whole society is doomed, there are no jobs, economy is down. And then I had a friend who worked for the Lehman Brothers and, then another bank, and he committed suicide. And for me, that was a wake-up call, huge wake-up call. If I continued a bit longer on this path, I'll be the same one. Because back then, I used the money to, firstly, to grow myself, and secondly, to help my family in war. So frankly, even when I lost my job, I didn't care about myself. What was bothering me, how can I support the family in war? And that was for me the biggest pain. That suddenly I wasn't able to help. And I didn't want to do that anymore. And I remember I spent all of my redundancy money, and I'm talking about around $100,000, into buying online courses, into hiring coaches, mentors, trainers, and going everywhere to help me clarify how do I bring those 2 worlds that I love together so I can go and help more people. And this was for me the defining moment when I said enough is enough.
When you're working with your clients, and I know that you do work with clients all over the world, what is the greatest thing that they have taught you?
Oh my God. I have this way of thinking, Gabby, that every client represents things that I've already overcome and healed. And which is interesting because every time I've grown, the kind of clients I attract are the clients who need the help of the things that I've mastered. And the teachers that I attract are the teachers that I need the thing I need to master. So, what people have taught me is the fact that in essence, I'm you, you are me, together we are love.
I love that. So let's talk about you becoming an author. You've accomplished so many things. Was that one of your life goals?
Actually, again, I have to credit my late mother. In 2002, after, the Civil War stopped and everything else, and in 98, for the first time, after 9 years not seeing my parents, we got united for my graduation in London. And then from 98 till 2002, every year I kept bringing them to London. But in 2002 specifically, my mother and my dad, they had their own agreements and disagreements. And I used to call them Tom and Jerry. And I was extremely close with both of them. But I was the only one, I'm the youngest of 6, who started to interview them for the times that they never, encouraged to speak emotionally about their life. So I started to have those conversations, and I wanted to really have something that one day I will, maybe share with the world. And it was then in 2002 when, in one of those heated moments, my mom and my dad, she turned around to my dad and said, "Don't you worry, my son's going to be an author. He's going to write a lot of books." And, I didn't pay attention to that. But in 2013, when I started writing my book, this is exactly 11 years afterwards. While I was writing it, I became so emotional that, I cried for hours without knowing why. And then I picked up my phone and I was sharing with my mom. And she went like, "Yes, you're following your path. I told you in 2002, you'll write books."
She knew,
And
so matter of factly. Yep.
And then it just clicked, Gabby. And then the moment I finished the draft, I was in a first book was written in Croatia. I was working with clients in Croatia, in Switzerland, in London, in Morocco, in Brazil, in Macedonia, Kosovo, and Albania. So the
Wow.
first book was written in all those different countries. But I finished the first draft when I was in Brazil. And so after I finished the first draft, before it gets published, the first thing I took the draft and I went to see my mom in Macedonia. And she was the first one who saw the manuscript. And we had this very priceless emotional moment with my mom. And I think most of moms out there at that generation, they never had, I would say, the freedom that women have today. And also, they weren't taught about talking about their pains, their frustrations. They're simply mothers working at home, providing for children, for their husband, for the family. That's it.
Or their
No
dreams.
matter what.
You never
No
talked
matter
about
what.
their dreams.
Yes. So when I took the manuscript to my mom, we both cried. And then when I started reading it, almost it was this healing process, both for me and my mom. And that is something that I encourage anybody who's considering to become an author. If their parents are alive, I would encourage them to share that journey with their parents.
I'm so glad you suggested that, and I'm so glad that you did that, because when you were talking earlier about your parents and your grandparents and the wars, I thought, wow, I hope Tony has had long conversations and discussions about their history, because there's just so much we can learn from that. There really is. I know our listeners, Tony, would like to know, do you have any other books in mind, and what's next for you?
Well, I just released The Path to Excellence, and also I just won a Hollywood award for the Unfakeable Code and Path to Excellence. And Path to Excellence, just literally now, a couple of weeks ago, went into the shop, and in there I also share a new methodology called the Octagon of Excellence. So all of my books have a theme that people go to. So in the first one, it's really helping people. The method is called TJSE method alarm, and it has like 5 main principles based on 25 pillars. And when you put that together, it's almost like this, you figure out the enigma of your life. So you start to really understanding what's going on inside of you, but also how the outer reality reflects back at you the things you need to change. And the second book was the #loneliness, which was about looking at the loneliness globally. And in there, I mentioned Mother Teresa, again, a figure that I met when I was a child with my mother, which, my mother taught me that one day, I would need to honor her. And I did in my book. And also helping people with that social isolation and a feeling of being separate from reality, from people, and not being able to share their intimate thoughts and life with another human being. And then the Unfakeable Code, and also I wrote 2 more books with other people. One is spiritual poems, and I channel poems uniquely for an individual. And then I can use that poem to train the individual all day long to unlock that intelligence within them. So the next thing that I'm working is I also have a documentary which went on Amazon Prime called Living by Illusion, The Truth Hurts. That was a side project I did with my clients, which then inspired me to create a whole new documentary series that I take my private clients through, and I create a purposeful documentary that helps them raise their authority, their credibility, maybe writing a book, maybe making a bigger difference in the world, maybe they have a charter course, it does not matter, but take their story, their transformation, also as a way of educating, inspiring others. So that's just been launched with Path to Excellence. And also, I've been an executive producer of the documentary called The Truth About Reading, which just got the premiere in Hollywood. I literally got back today from LA.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. And that's tackling the illiteracy issue across America and what can be done for more people to be better educated, but also increase their literacy level, and how that affects the economy, people, society, family, and all of those things. And then I'm also in the process now. I got inspired. I always get inspired when I solve problems for people. A lot of my clients who I've helped through divorce, through relationship, through problems with their children, they asked me to write a book about relationship, book about healing, book about love, the science of love, and the science of heartbreak, because there's a science why people end up having heartbreak when they separate from somebody. But also something that I'm called to do, it's to inspire many people out there become geniuses. So I'm also inspired to write a book called The Unfakeable Genius, maybe, or something else. And then also a couple of books with leadership, doing some courses, and also the methods that I've developed, they're all part of trademark methods that I want to bring them in education, in healthcare, in business, in government, politics, so I can make a greater contribution in the world.
You sure have, and you sure will continue to. So how can our listeners find out more about you and your work? Because that was a lot.
The best way they can do that is, for sure, I recommend them to start reading any of my work. They can go to my website, TonyJSelimi.com, and in there they can read about every book, but also the work that I do with different people, individuals, businesses, families, and also there are some free downloads people can do. And in my shop over there, they can get the meditation solutions, because each meditation, each book has a meditation to help people really unlock that intelligence within them, so they can be truly successful, grateful, and make a greater impact in the world with the gifts they have.
That's fantastic. So Tony, since we began our talk, I've been admiring your pin. Tell us the significance of it.
Well, it goes back to my mother as well.
I had that feeling. I had that feeling.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And it's my mom left me a few little things, pins, and she said to me, "You'll wear them in the streets wherever you are on TV and stuff like that." So they actually never leave me. And this one, it's angel wings. You know, a lot of my clients call me an angel. My mother used to call me that. My dad used to call me a diamond. So there's a diamond and angel in here.
Well, thank you for making that part of our podcast. Lastly, Tony, what is the one message that you have for our listeners, your readers and fans, and people all over the world who want to make a more significant impact in this world?
Start with clarifying what is it exactly that you want to create in life. And when you create that vision that goes beyond oneself, and I would recommend dedicate your time, your energy, your money, and relentlessly pursue that vision beyond oneself. And before you know it, your life will change in front of you.
Well, Tony, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful messages, your incredible journey with us. Until our next podcast, keep on reading. Thank you again, Tony. This is Gabby Olzak of the GAB Talks.
Thank you.